They just tell the stories. Thanks to my wife, I'm where I am. You said that about the first wife. You forget that? You told us it was her. Then you went and married somebody else that think like a man. Like, what are you talking about? They think they can rewrite history.
Oh my God, somebody please say it ain't so. Now that Katt Williams made up with Kevin Hart, I think it's about time he reach out to Steve Harvey, because it's ridiculous how he's talking about Steve and his wife Marjorie. Not only is Katt Williams talking crazy, but Wendy Williams was talking crazy too.
Lori wasn't born a Harvey. Steve adopted her when he got with Marjorie, his wife, but she got with him on some...
When I think about how quickly he moved forward from me to Marjorie, that was disturbing.
Thanks to my wife, I'm where I am. You said that about the first wife. You forget that? You told us it was her. Then you went and married somebody else that think like a man.
Marjorie Harvey is shaking in her boots after Katt Williams and Wendy went off on her for destroying Lori and making Steve abandon his entire family to be with her. In fact, one of Steve's many ex-wives, Mary Shackelford, stepped into the chat to confirm the allegations that Marjorie was behind Steve putting his hands on his biological kids. The crazy thing is, Katt and Wendy were way ahead of all this when they exposed Steve years ago, but everyone thought they were bitter. It turns out, they were actually right, but just way too ahead of time. Now, if you've been keeping up with Steve and Marjorie, then you already know that people have had their reservations about Marjorie right from the jump. First, because of her shady history with dating some of the most questionable men you can imagine, and second, her being more than comfortable with the fact that Steve literally abandoned and physically mistreated his biological family just to be with her. And on top of that, she supposedly convinced him to adopt her kids and give them everything his biological kids were supposed to get. Mind you, Steve literally has 4 biological offspring with 3 different women, but somehow we hear nothing about them. And the few times we do, it's because they are calling him out for not doing right by them. Marjorie's kids, on the other hand, especially Lori, are all up in our faces. And baby, if you thought for a second that it was a coincidence, then you really need to wake up. Now, in case you don't know about Marjorie, she was actually married to a whole kingpin called Jim Townsend. The crazy thing is, Jim was actually already married and a whole 14 years older than her. The fact that she was still so comfortable settling with him is beyond wild. She later claimed she didn't know he was married. But baby, that still didn't stop her from having 2 kids with him. Word on the street is, she was struggling financially and only got with Jim so he could take care of her. And even though this kinda sounds wild, you'll notice later on that this is a pattern with Marjorie. She gets with only men with money, even if they are involved in illegal things. As long as you have that bag, she's down to settle with you till she stops getting what she wants. Allegedly, of course. Anyway, Jim was eventually arrested around 1991 for attempting to buy 40 kilos of white powder. He was sentenced to life and served 26 years before a 2017 pardon by President Obama. Of course, by that time, Marjorie had already moved on. In fact, she divorced him about 5 years into his sentence while pregnant with their second kid. Now, you'd think that Marjorie would learn her lesson and do better, but she pretty much repeated the same mistake again. And to make matters even worse, the man dated, Darnell Woods, was actually a distant cousin of Jim. And just like Jim, he was also reportedly into the same illegal substance business. Marjorie really seems to like whatever mess that family had going on. Because what do you mean you jumped right into the bed of your baby daddy's cousin? Yikes. Oh, and in case you were wondering, yes, Darnell is Lori's biological father. Anyway, right after this, she needed the next rich man to fund her lifestyle and take care of the 3 kids she had successfully popped with low-quality men. And that's when she met Steve.
It sounded to me like Marjorie Harvey decided to make the right decision and date somebody that could be a father to her kids without going in and out of jail, having to worry about the police kicking down the door. She found a man that's legit, Steve Harvey has been well known in Hollywood for a long time for being the A1 guy. He about that word. He about his money. So I feel like he's a great catch for anybody that's trying to stabilize their situation. That don't mean he a simp. That don't mean he a sucker. Marjorie Harvey is fine as I don't know what. And if you had the opportunity to be with her, you would marry her too. And Steve is still successful. It's not like she dragged him down or weakened him as a man. If anything, it's looking like Marjorie Harvey built him to be a better man.
Now, as I said earlier, Steve also had 4 kids of his own at this point and had just begun making money from comedy. But instead of spending that on his kids, he decided to marry Marjorie, adopt all 3 of her kids, and give them the life that his own kids were supposed to have. At the time that Marjorie walked into Steve's life, he had just ended his marriage with Mary, or so we thought. According to Mary, she found emails and letters between Steve and Marjorie that proved he was actually cheating on Mary way before they got divorced. And even after doing that, he brainwashed their son Winston into thinking she was the problem. Marjorie saw all this go down and didn't even bother checking Steve. As long as he was down to adopt her kids and make her the first lady of that household, she was good.
With all the emails and the text messages and the different things that were that I was finding out about, I thought the least that he could do, make me whole at the end of it. He left. He just left, walked out the door. Once he realized that I was going to divorce him, he walked out the door. He had a shoulder bag. He walked out. Went right to New York, to our apartment that we had there, which I never got to see, by the way, but... And then she joined him there. Marjorie joined him there. Never an apology. Steve never said that he was sorry. He had our housekeeper pack his belongings up and forward those belongings to New York. He took my Winton. Took my Winton from me. He turned my son against me. Had me evicted from our house. Thrown out. All the businesses, all the money, the cars. At a moment when I was down and devastated, he maneuvered everything. He manipulated the courts, everything against me.
Now, you'd think that Steve and Marjorie would at least do right by Winton, since they allegedly convinced him that Mary was the problem. But according to Mary, Marjorie actually watched Steve put his hands on Winton so badly that he ended up in the hospital fighting for his life. In an explosive article posted by TMZ, Mary claims Steve got a phone call from the boy's school informing him his son lied about turning in homework. According to Winton, Steve hit him with a belt and then a paddleboard, the kind used for hazing in fraternities. And according to the police report, the cops took photos of the boy's injuries, showing bruises on his buttocks and right thigh, as well as cuts on his leg. The police report says the boy told cops the beating was so brutal he had trouble urinating for days. Imagine going through all of that just to get custody of your son, only to bring him home and treat him badly. You really cannot make this stuff up. It's pretty obvious this was never actually about the child. It was about getting back at Mary. And even though the physical evidence was right there for anyone to see, the case ended up getting thrown out after Steve leveraged his money and connections to make the whole thing disappear. But Mary wasn't done. She came back swinging and exposed Steve for fabricating his entire homeless backstory. According to her, Steve has never spent a single day without a roof over his head. He apparently invented the whole sleeping in the streets narrative just to make his come-up story hit harder than it actually deserved to.
Before I forget, girl, I gotta ask you this, because this is practically in so many articles when Steve Harvey is speaking of motivation and all of this other stuff. Was Steve homeless? Was he homeless, sleeping in his car and all of this stuff?
Steve Harvey was never homeless a day in his life. Not one time. Because let's just add this up. Between your mama's house, Marsha's house, my apartment, and whatever you had purchased for Marjorie, what point in there would he have time to be homeless? Okay, the closest he ever came to homeless was when I think it was a year into our relationship. And he kept saying, I want you to go out on the road with me. I want you to go. And he wasn't making a lot of money. And all I had was what I was making from the store. So I said, I cannot just quit my job and go out there. So I guess it was about a year and a half later, I actually quit the job. And he was like, you got to go. I need you out here. So there were nights when we had to get from like Dallas to Miami or whatever. Obviously, you can't drive that in one sitting. So yeah, there were some times when we would pull over to a park or whatever. Steve was never homeless a day in his life. And all this People magazine, from homeless to millionaire and all of that. No, he was never hungry. He might have been hungry, needing a sandwich, but nowhere near to not having no food, not having no home.
But as I said, a lot of people weren't really taking Mary seriously because they figured she was just a bitter ex-wife who couldn't let go. That was until Katt Williams stepped forward, threw his full support behind her, and confirmed everything she'd been saying all these years. And things get even messier from there, because Katt also came for Steve over his credibility in the comedy world, accusing him of building his career on other people's work. He claimed Steve was secretly jealous of the late Bernie Mac while Bernie was still alive. But the moment Bernie passed, he turned around and lifted his entire style. He also called Steve out for helping himself to Mark Curry's jokes as well.
Better than all of y'all, and y'all thought y'all had one over on him. You thought he was black and ugly, and you were good looking, and he couldn't make it because you did. And that ain't the way comedy works. The king is the funniest. Period. Every time. And that's why no audience member was ever swayed. It didn't matter where Bernie went. You think if Bernie went first, he wasn't the king? Get out of here. Get out of here. Get your ego out of this. You let the best be the best.
And he wasn't finished either, because he went all the way in defending Mary by backing up her claims about Steve's fake homeless story. According to Katt, Steve was out here collecting $3,000 checks every other night, touring alongside Mark Curry, well before fame ever found him. That whole rags to riches narrative was apparently completely made up.
Like Steve Harvey telling people he used to be homeless. That's my story. That's not his story. Steve Harvey wasn't never homeless. When Mark Curry was touring with him 25 years ago, he was making $3,000 a show in cash and doing 5 shows a week. They just tell the stories. The same Steve that went to go watch Mark Curry do his whole sitcom and then stole everything Mark Curry had. Now Steve got a sitcom where he the principal and he wear a suit and then he gets this high top fade, making all black men think he got the best lineup in the business, and it's a man unit. Then you ask him, why you not a movie star? I didn't want to be a movie star. That's the same that hated on Bernie with this same thing.
He also called Steve out for never once giving Mary her flowers for the role she played in helping him build his career from the ground up. He didn't mention her by name directly, but it didn't take much reading between the lines to figure out exactly who he was talking about and what point he was making.
They just tell the stories. Thanks to my wife, I'm where I am. You said that about the first wife. You forget that? You told us it was her. Then you went and married somebody else that think like a man. Like, what are you talking about? They think they can rewrite history.
And as if this wasn't enough shade for Marjorie, people also dug up receipts of Wendy Williams also dragging Marjorie for the way Lori turned out. As y'all know, Lori has been in and out of very public relationships since she was in college. And according to Wendy, Marjorie taught her this. She said Marjorie could have done a better job making sure Lori didn't turn out like this. Instead, she allegedly just allowed her to do whatever she wanted. And Steve can't really say much because Marjorie has him in a chokehold.
Lori wasn't born a Harvey. Steve adopted her when he got with Marjorie, his wife, but she got with him on some... All I'm saying is, Steve, I hope you and Marjorie are very proud of your daughter. At 23 years old, being with a man with so many children and running around, and she dated Puffy and Puffy's son, allegedly. If this was my daughter at 23, I would break her neck, crack her skull, and throw her down the steps. That's all. And you're not the boss of your kids when they're 23 years old, but you could have implemented a certain type of way. Like all this right here, this is treasure, Lori.
As usual, people had their thoughts, like this person who said, people talking about Steve Harvey and forgetting that he abandoned his first wife and kids the moment he started to make money and fame, cheated on his first wife, Mary, with Marjorie, and later married her. Another person said, Steve Harvey took a married woman. Her husband was in jail at that time. He left his wife, mistreated his own kids. Get your bag, Marjorie. But now I want to know your thoughts. What do you think about Katt Williams and Wendy exposing Marjorie for her lies? And do you really think Marjorie got with him specifically?
Oh my God, I just don't know. Y'all gonna have to let me know how y'all feel about this in the comment section, man. As sure as my beard is nappy, Steve Harvey is happy, and I want him to keep on being happy. Whatever Katt Williams talking about, where his wife at? Whatever Wendy Williams talking about, where her husband at? It's always somebody out there that ain't got what you got, speaking on what you got. But that's Negro here, no there. Let me know what y'all think about this in the comment section below, and for all you beautiful ladies out there.
Risk my life to give you documentations, girl. I risk my life to give you documentations, girl. I risk my life to give you documentations, girl. I risk my life to give you documentation.